Exactly 200 years ago, the global human population was approximately 1 billion. Today, that number has climbed to nearly 8 billion. Looking at this chart, the trend is unmistakable. For thousands of years, the population remains a flat line. Then, in just 2 centuries, the data explodes upward, adding 7 billion lives in a fraction of the time it took to create the first billion. Traditional reincarnation relies on a fixed inventory of souls cycling through different bodies, changing forms like old clothes. But this creates a 7 billion deficit. If we recycle spirits, there's no logical explanation for these new arrivals. They're an unaccounted surplus in a closed system. Rather than inventing mystical loopholes to account for these numbers, we should examine the physical mechanics of life as it actually happens. The math suggests the recycling model is flawed. If the numbers don't support a closed loop of souls, then our baseline assumptions about life and death require a total reassessment. Cultural folklore often describes death as a physical departure, an energetic light or a whisk of smoke that vacates the body at the moment the heart stops. In reality, a death occurring in a sealed, dark room produces no measurable change in light or energy. There is no flash, no glow, and no evidence of a physical entity leaving the space. Life functions more like a chemical reaction. After a heavy rain, millions of insects can spawn, live, and die in a single day, emerging directly from the conditions of their environment. This time-lapse shows biological life in its earliest stages. We are seeing cells rapidly dividing and organizing. Life isn't being imported from a spiritual plane. It is an emergent property triggered by specific physical and environmental catalysts. A living creature is a self-contained physical reaction. It is a biological event that emerges from the natural world, rather than a vessel for a mystical passenger. Consider a botanical seed. It contains the instructions and the potential to build a tree, using only soil and water. Human development follows this same self-contained path. This diagram shows life's start. The blueprint comes from parental genetics. Cellular chemistry generates life, requiring no spiritual input. At life's end, the process reverses. Nothing supernatural leaves. The body decomposes into carbon, minerals, and water, returning to Earth. Stories of ghosts and lingering spirits are psychological projections. They are how we process the finality of death through the lens of our own superstitions. Without an immortal soul to fly in or out, our biological existence is the entirety of our individual reality. If there is no karmic record and no afterlife, we have to ask why things like murder or violence are considered wrong. Removing the safety net of an afterlife makes our current, finite time an irreplaceable resource. Morality becomes a question of protecting the only existence we will ever have. Think of a human life as a timed examination meant to last 80 to 100 years. You are given a specific window to experience the world and complete your story. This timeline represents a full century of life. Cutting that line at the 30-year mark is the equivalent of being violently ejected from the exam hall, with 70 years of potential left on the table. Violence is a crime of theft. It is the permanent destruction of a person's only opportunity to exist, robbing them of decades of unique biological time. Harm is wrong because it destroys the rarest commodity in the universe, the finite window of a living consciousness. Ethical standards apply to any creature capable of fear. Animals have the biological hardware required to feel pain and a desperate desire to continue their own existence. This close-up reveals an active sentience. Ignoring this capacity for suffering for the sake of a momentary taste is a failure to acknowledge the reality of life in others. Acts of cruelty reshape the perpetrator's internal psychology. Choosing to ignore suffering chips away at the capacity for empathy, hollowing out one's own sense of humanity. There is no need to perform good deeds in hopes of being born into royalty in a fictional next life. Empathy provides an immediate, tangible reward. Choosing to be compassionate brings a sense of internal peace and joy that can be in this life. true purpose is found by stripping away superstition. We find our humanity by choosing to be radically kind in the single fleeting life we possess.